And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Flying weather graphic for Tuesday morning. IFR here, southwest interior Bristol Bay, and then wrapping back up along the southwest coast or to Nunivak Island. Marginal VFR for the Pribilofs on up to St. Lawrence Island, Seward Peninsula, and then some IFR there from the northwest coast up and around the central Arctic coast, and marginal VFR over toward Kaktovik, Barter Island, down across the Brooks Range, eastern interior, marginal VFR, some areas of VFR, and same thing for Kodiak Island, southeast coast, IFR with marginal VFR. And for the afternoon Tuesday, no change here for the Panhandle, North Gulf Coast, a lot of IFR into the eastern Copper River Basin, northern Prince William Sound, eastern Kenai Peninsula into Passage Canal, with VFR here more or less in the central interior, marginal VFR from the northern valleys here across the Brooks Range to IFR for the central Arctic coast. IFR through the Bering Strait in a band here down to the Alaska Peninsula. Next area of IFR out here to the west with that next system edges its way eastward a little bit there for Wednesday morning with a pretty good area of VFR in advance of that as Atka Island begins to clear out, and for IFR for Bristol Bay, north side of the Alaska Peninsula, marginal VFR here along the west coast, Seward Peninsula, North Slope there into the northern Kobuk, Koyukuk Valley areas, and the Brooks Range, IFR eastern Arctic coast. Still IFR here for the North Gulf Coast and the southwest interior, some IFR sliding up for Wednesday morning there along the Alaska Range. And again, no change for the Panhandle, marginal VFR with some IFR over toward the eastern border. And then for Wednesday afternoon, marginal VFR for the southeast coast and IFR Prince William Sound. Otherwise, a lot of marginal VFR out here over the southwest part of the state, Cook Inlet all the way out to Kuskokwim Bay, Nunivak Island, Alaska Peninsula, as well as the western interior. And the North Slope and the Brooks Range look pretty marginal for the day, or for the time frame Wednesday afternoon. VFR for the Fox Islands up to the Pribilofs and back toward Atka with IFR, ADAC westward to Shimianatu. Fort Passes, marginal VFR for both Anatuvik and Adigan for Tuesday. Lake Clark and Merrill, occasional IFR, both passes there, as well as rainy. Windy, VFR there with possible marginal VFR in the northern entrance. Otherwise, Isabel looks marginal. And for Mentasta, VFR. Tanita, marginal VFR. And Portage, IFR. Chilcoot and White, same forecast, IFR. Freezing levels here, kind of a big area of cool upper low pressure over the eastern Bering Sea. So 4,000 feet through this area, 6,000 feet over the northeast part of the state, 8,000 feet there, eastern Arctic coast, 6,000 to 8,000 over the Panhandle. And looking at icing, we've got the best chance of some considerable moderate rime icing here, North Gulf Coast into Cook Inlet area, and then lesser of a threat here to the west. Alaska Peninsula, kind of an elevated threat of some icing there of the light variety, and maybe for the western Arctic coast. And for the jet stream here, again, at 33,000 feet, we've got low pressure more or less right over the southwest interior. Northerly flow on the backside of that big trough here, up to 120 knots. They're coming down into the central Aleutians. And to the south, cutting across the southern Gulf of Alaska out of the southwest into the Queen Charlotte, so lighter over much of mainland Alaska, including the Panhandle. 9,000 foot wind flow showing a couple of lows here near Togiak Bay and just south of the Alaska Peninsula. The main jet south of the area here at about 50 to 40 knots into the Queen Charlottes, and maybe 30 to 35 over the southern Panhandle. Northerlies 45 knots there, central Bering Sea to Adak and Atka. And at 3,000 feet, northerlies 30 to 35 knots here down across the central Aleutians. Pretty light over mainland Alaska here, and maybe 15 to 25 knots along the western Arctic coast out of the southwest, but light variable winds for the Panhandle, Gulf of Alaska, into Kodiak Island. And for turbulence, maybe some moderate turbulence, surface 6,000 feet for Atka, Adak, and light to isolated moderate, possibly reaching the Kulski. Otherwise, nothing of any significance expected anywhere else around the state.